What's up, and welcome to part 2 of the marvelous Miss Maisel companion podcast presented by The Disorderly. Please visit thedisorderly.com for the best in sports and entertainment. You can find us on Twitter at Disorderly Media, Facebook at Disorderly ENT, and you can find me on Twitter at Nick Risner, Nickrizner. So this is part 2. We're going to be covering episode 3, episode 4, obviously a 10-episode season, all available on Amazon Prime right now, and we're going to kind of work through it with this podcast, but getting right to it, episode 3 was kind of a plot mover for me. Lots of things happened, but I didn't find it particularly noteworthy. By that I mean, there wasn't a lot to dive into or discuss. I'm sure there is, and I'm sure that other people got more out of it, but that was kind of how I felt about this episode, especially just by the standard this show has set for itself. I feel like this one fell short on that. Now, it might be necessary. You can't have a home run in every single episode. You need to move the plot, but for me, it just, I don't know, it was kind of a non-episode. And that, by the way, is in stark contrast to the 4th episode, which we'll get to, obviously. But covering the 3rd episode, we got a whole storyline about Midge returning to the showroom just to check coats. She obviously wants to be at the makeup counter. She's basically checking coats, ultimately loses that job when she leaves the booth, strictly forbidden, ends up back in the phone operator room. Midge also gives the worst wedding speech ever. She realizes that, she no longer knows the line between the stage and how to talk to normal people. And that part didn't really make a lot of sense to me because obviously a comic would know when they're bombing. If anything, they'd be acutely aware of the fact that they're bombing. And yet it seems like Midge almost doesn't realize she's losing the room and doesn't hear the oohs and ahs until the speech is over. I don't know. I can let it slide, but it just didn't make a lot of sense to me. Just as a stand-up fan, I didn't really understand that. Meanwhile, Joel spends the entire episode digging around for all this hidden money. His mom is basically crazy. She's left him a bunch of treasure maps to hide all this hidden money that they used to bribe different customers and clients. So he's trying to decipher these things and find all the hidden money. Ultimately, he stumbles upon a back room at their factory shop. It seems like he's going to turn it into his apartment, but obviously we don't get a lot of that because the very next episode, they go to the Catskills. So we don't see any progress. That's just kind of where that storyline is hanging for now. And finally, Rose, Miss Maisel's mom, she nearly gets kicked out of the school at Columbia because she's convinced all her classmates to either switch majors, go to business school where all the prime husband candidates are, or drop out altogether. And actually, in a particularly sweet moment, I thought, Abe defends Rose and kind of fast talks his way into keeping her in the school. And that's basically it. That's kind of the episode. Like I said, a lot happened, but I don't know how much I can really dive into, how much I can elaborate on. It was just a lot of plot, kind of a basic plot. Now, the Catskill episode, on the other hand, that was a memorable one. Probably the scariest horror movie you'll see this year. It was almost like a sequel to Get Out, or actually, more accurately, a prequel, right? It would be like what Get Out was like before Chris showed up at the house. That's just like what that neighborhood is like on a random summer. But in all seriousness, though, I think this is probably the best shot episode of the series so far. The long shots were captivating. I don't know how else to really put it. The still shot when they first get to the house, they're everything's not in the right order and people are popping out of windows and the movers are going in and out of the house. Like that entire shot was really cool, really kind of stuck out to me. More impressively, actually, the entire dance scene with the changing partners, with the spinning camera and the whole thing's following her, and they do it from what I can tell in one take. I think the obvious parallel you can draw is Birdman, right? Birdman had like the really long one take type scenes, kind of a similar feel to it. So it reminded me of that. Or, and this is going to be a kind of a weird reference, but have you ever seen the movie Hannah? Hannah's about, a little blonde girl who is trained to be an assassin. I don't know. It's obviously a different genre completely, but the dancing scene was very similar to the long shot sort of action scenes in that movie. There's a lot of fight scenes where the camera doesn't cut away and it's, choreographed and really intricate. Obviously different, but in some ways I felt like it was similar. It reminded me of it at the very least. Also, my personal favorite scene, or series of scenes, my favorite moment in that episode was seeing how out of context Susie was through the whole thing. Just dressed as a plumber, walking around completely unnoticed by these kind of like Pleasantville type people. It was a perfect break, right? Because I thought the episode was creepy. I really thought it was a creepy episode. The whole Catskill, everyone's got a big smile on their face, especially that little orientation song they were doing. That was straight up, like, I'm going to have nightmares about that. And I thought that having Susie there as a contrast was kind of perfect for, bringing it back home and taking us out of the hypnotic sort of Catskill scene. Oh, and we got the introduction of Chuck, or Zachary Levi, I guess. Though I strictly know him as NBC's Chuck, reluctant secret agent, head of the nerd herd. Could not be happier that he's in this. I feel like, I think I knew it, right? Like I saw it in the trailer. I think I saw him in the trailer for season 2, but that was a while ago and I completely forgot. So when he came into the episode, obviously there's a big build up. Everyone's trying to get Midge to start dating Benjamin. So there's build up to it, but I completely forgot who it was. So when he came on the screen, very excited. I know as an audience, we're probably supposed to root for the first love we get introduced to, right? You have Ross and Rachel, Jim and Pam, and of course in this show it's Miriam and Joel. But screw it, man. I'm a big Chuck guy. Give me Miriam and Chuck all day. By the way, that conversation about forgiveness between Benjamin and Joel, that was probably the best dialogue I've heard so far. And it was noticeable, too, especially in that episode, where everything was particularly upbeat. I feel like the whole series kind of has that feel to it. Everything's really upbeat, really fast-paced, and especially in this episode when they're in this, perfect Catskill type getaway thing for rich people, there's this rare slow moment that they decided to end the episode on, where things slow way down. It kind of made you pay attention to what they're saying, the dialogue. Obviously, it's this existential crisis that Joel is going through, I guess, but it seems like it's something that Benjamin's kind of struggled with too. And they're talking about, do we need people, or how should we be living our life? Is there such thing as forgiveness? Like, that entire thing was really kind of this profound moment that I thought was an amazing way to end the episode. And to be honest, I'm just thinking out loud right now, looking back, this was probably my favorite episode of the series so far. I really think so. I'd have to go back and revisit season 1 episode by episode to say that for sure, but it's definitely my favorite episode of the season. Granted, it's episode 4. We got 6 to go. But this might be a contender for the best episode this show has ever done. I think it really might be. And on that, perfect place to sort of wrap things up. That was part 2 of Marvelous Miss Maisel, a companion podcast presented by The Disorderly. Please rate, review, subscribe. Obviously, the feed's got other things mixed in there as well. We do the Sports Report podcast on a weekly basis. We'll have another one of those coming out, in a couple days. We're going to keep chugging on through this season of Marvelous Miss Maisel. Another great one, man. I'm enjoying it so far. I hope you guys are as well. And that'll do it. Peace, guys.